Hello, I'm Conrad Bain. Tonight on Different Strokes, we're starting a special two-part show on a very sensitive and important subject. Now, we urge families, children, and parents alike to watch both of these informative episodes and then to discuss the problem presented, which is of deep concern to all of us.
Remember when sitcoms ruled the TV airwaves when we were growing up back in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s? I do. These shows actually made us laugh. And I know the art form is on its deathbed now, but back then we spent time each and every week with our favorite characters to watch them say and do silly and crazy things, whether they were at home, at school, in the workplace, or even on a deserted island. The tone of these shows remained light and fun, for the most part. It was like comfort food for the soul. When the bulk of Gen X was being born in the 1970s, TV visionary Norman Lear began making sitcoms for an adult audience that would occasionally tackle sensitive issues like racism, sexual assault, and abortion, with a touch of comedy always added to the story. Then in the 80s, family sitcoms with a much younger audience decided to pivot to more serious content once or twice a season, usually during sweeps, and these became known as very special episodes. Sure, these episodes can appear to be cheesy and cringeworthy to modern audiences, but back then, when they were done right, these very special episodes were an absolute treat. They became an opportunity to teach valuable life lessons to Gen X kids through relatable characters. But sometimes they managed to traumatize us in the process, and they did it with a laugh track. And since I long for the days when television tried to teach us a thing or two about life with creative, family-friendly storytelling, I think this is a perfect time to take a look at some of the most well-known, very special episodes from our most favorite sitcoms that traumatized us 80s kids. Webster was a sitcom about a former pro football player and wealthy socialite, played by real-life couple Alex Karras and Susan Clark, who adopt their adorable godchild, played by Emmanuel Lewis, after his parents pass away in a car accident. Shortly into the second season, there was a scary episode where Webster accidentally burned down the family's high-rise Chicago apartment with a science kit. There was also an episode where a kid who was living with his mom after a divorce was kidnapped by his dad. But they really went for it with a very special episode in season 2 titled The Uh-Oh Feeling. As the show begins, Webster tells his classmate Beth, played by future Days of Our Lives star Allison Sweeney, that he really likes their new math tutor named Mr. Todson, but she doesn't feel the same way. As the unseen teacher dismisses the class, he tells Beth that he wants her to stay and sends Webster away.
He said, I heard, but it's okay. My day is tomorrow. Yeah. Well, see ya. Bye.
Oh, and close the door, honey.
On his way out of school, Webster realizes he's still carrying Beth's books, so he goes back to the classroom and overhears Beth's objections to touching and tickling.
And I'm so proud of you. And now that we're friends, why not be a good little girl and give Mr. Todson a big hug?
Okay.
Oh, what a nice hug.
Thank you. Mr. Todson, stop tickling me there.
Webster's quick thinking leads him to yell through the door to tell Beth that their ride is waiting, while Mr. Todson warns Beth not to tell anyone about their little secret, or else her parents won't like her anymore and she'll get into big trouble.
Beth, it's me, Webster. Ma'am and George outside. They came to pick us up. They said come right away. I'm coming.
Beth, this has got to be our little secret. Trust me, if you tell your mother and dad, they're not going to like you anymore, and they're going to be very mad at you.
You've got to promise not to tell. But I'll get in trouble, please. Okay, I promise.
That night, at dinner with George and Ma'am, Webster wasn't interested in talking about Mr. Todson. He went so far as to fake being sick to avoid going to school the next day, and ends up terrified in his closet, refusing to go. And when Webster's found by his parents, he finally tells them about his tutor.
And then he said moms and daddies get mad, and Beth made me promise not to tell. And I did promise, and tomorrow was my turn, and today's tomorrow.
Oh, honey, I know. You must have been very scared.
As George's anger swells, Webster says he's worried about getting into trouble for telling on his teacher, but his parents assure him that he did the right thing. Then they tell Beth's mom what happened, but she refuses to believe Webster's story. Still, George and Mam contact the authorities, call the Center for Child Abuse, and bring in a therapist to talk to Webster and his class about good, bad, and confusing touches.
There are some touches that are good touches, and there are some touches that are bad touches, and there are some touches that are just plain confusing. You know, sometimes a good touch can turn into a bad touch, and then you start to think, I'm not sure I like this anymore. Now,
how do you know for sure when a touch is really bad?
Well, you get a different feeling inside. It's kind of a tingly little feeling that says, uh-oh. And that uh-oh feeling tells you something's wrong.
As the episode comes to an end, the National Child Abuse Hotline number is displayed. Is the episode a little cheesy? Maybe, but it was definitely informative. The therapist talking to the kids on their level at the end was a great lesson for 80s kids watching at home. Many 80s kids remember Silver Spoons as having one of the greatest houses in sitcom history, a mansion filled with video arcade games and a train that ran right through the living room. But the show was about a kid named Ricky Stratton, played by Rick Schroeder, who goes to live with his wealthy, eccentric father that he never knew, who happened to own a toy company. Silver Spoons had a few special episodes that tackled topics like teen pregnancy, drinking, and drugs. But in late season 2, they brought their very best with the episode titled Spare the Rod. It begins with Ricky's new friend Toby explaining that he broke his arm because he fell out of a tree when he was trying to save a cat. Cut to Toby and Ricky playing ball in the house, and they cause Kate's birthday present to break, and Mr. Stratton yells at Ricky. This bums Ricky out, but Toby thinks that he got off easy. Then he suddenly opens up and tells Ricky that he's a victim of abuse at the hands of his father. Toby confesses that he didn't break his arm attempting to save a cat. Instead, that injury was a result of his dad's reaction to Toby forgetting to take out the trash. He then swears Ricky to secrecy, threatening to pull out his nose hairs one by one should Ricky ever tell anyone. And this leaves Ricky conflicted. The next day, Toby shows up at the Stratton house with a scarf covering his face, and when Ricky pulls it off, it's revealed that Toby's face is covered with bruises. Toby tells a story about falling off of a fence, but Ricky calls him out, and the truth about Toby's dad is revealed. Toby is adamant that it's his fault, and he's a screw-up, so his dad has to be tough on him so he can learn how to behave. Toby doesn't want his dad to get in trouble, but Mr. Stratton still invites him over for a chat. Of course, he denies the abuse allegations, but we also get to see his violent temper when Mr. Stratton shares a story about a kid who was beaten to death by his dad.
Toby got the bruises from you. You hit him.
Are you accusing me of beating up my own son?
Look, I know there are reasons these things
happen. Did Toby tell you I hit him?
I think we should discuss the situation.
I'm not going to listen to this crap.
Just sit down, Larry, okay? Here's your drink.
Forget it!
I remember last year there was a kid came into the hospital. He was pretty banged up. And the doctors found out that his father had been beating him. So they reported it, and the case went to court, and the father swore up and down that he would never do that again. So the judge gave him the benefit of the doubt. And then a month later, he lost control and hit his son again. Found himself right back in court. Only this time, he was on trial for murder.
Toby's dad then breaks down and admits he has a problem. And while they probably should call the police or Child Protective Services, they don't. Instead, it's decided that Toby's dad is going to a group called Parents Anonymous to get help for his anger and abuse problems, while Toby will go to live with his aunt. Spare the Rod is a well-rounded episode of Silver Spoons that did a great job of letting 80s kids know that it's okay to report abuse and that there are always people who are willing to help. Because Full House started in 1987, I am including the episode Shape Up on this list, even though it technically aired for the first time in early 1991. It was just too memorable to leave out because I'm close to the same age as Candace Cameron, who I adore, and I remember it having such an effect on me. Of course, Full House was a staple of ABC's TGIF lineup, with the series being centered on widower Danny Tanner raising his 3 daughters with his brother-in-law Jesse and friend Joey. Over the course of 8 seasons, Full House explored its share of serious topics, like child abuse, teen drinking, and sex. But the very special episode, the best one of Full House, came in late season 4, and it was titled Shape Up. And it focused on the body image and eating issues experienced by the oldest Tanner daughter, DJ. She feels pressure because she'll have to wear a bathing suit to her best friend Kimmy Gibbler's pool party. DJ doesn't like the way she looks and decides she has to get skinny in the 2 weeks before the party. She hangs pictures of swimsuit models on the fridge for inspiration, and she stops eating. But she still doesn't think she's losing enough weight. When the Tanner family heads to the gym, DJ ends up overdoing it on the exercise bike and she nearly passes out, which leads to the family finding out that she's been starving herself.
Nothing is going on. I'm going to Kimmy's for dinner. Don't believe her, Dad.
Steph, you pinky swore.
I don't care. I don't want you to get sick. Dad, I know why DJ's acting so cranky and why she got dizzy today. She hasn't eaten anything in 3 days.
You haven't eaten anything in 3 days?
DJ, I think you should sit down and eat right now.
I can't. I'm finally starting to lose weight.
DJ, you're starving yourself. You could do serious damage to your body.
Deej, this kind of behavior can lead to serious eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia. You're headed down a dangerous road here.
I don't care. I'm the one that has to wear the bathing suit next week.
As the episode comes to a close, there's a really great scene where DJ tells her dad that she doesn't think she's beautiful. But he tells her that not only is she beautiful, but stresses that she's beautiful both inside and out, and it's the inside that counts. He also points out how much her friends like and respect her. This talk with her dad makes DJ feel so much better, and in the final scene, she decides that she is going to eat healthy and take care of herself, but there's no need to starve yourself. Mr. Belvedere was no stranger to serious subject matter during its 5 seasons. There were episodes that dealt with molestation, drinking and driving, and Alzheimer's. However, Mr. Belvedere broke some serious ground with the season 2 episode, Wesley's Friend. In the cold open, Wesley is bummed out because he's stuck playing William Howard Taft in the school's President's Day pageant. He wishes he had a better part in the show, and the opportunity suddenly presents itself for Wesley to play one of the stars, Abraham Lincoln. The problem is, he's getting the chance to play Lincoln because his friend Danny caught something called AIDS, and his parents had him removed from school. Cue the opening theme song.
He was supposed to play Lincoln, but his parents had to come and take him home.
Why?
He got caught with this stuff called AIDS.
AIDS?
Oh my God.
Boy, he must really be in trouble.
It turns out that Danny was a hemophiliac who had contracted AIDS as a result of receiving infected blood. This was the same way that Ryan White was infected, an Indiana teenager who was expelled from school in the 80s when he contracted AIDS from a blood transfusion. Since it's 1985 in this episode, everyone in town is misinformed about AIDS, and the kids at school think they can get it just by going to Danny's house, touching him, or by drinking out of the same glass. They even heard Danny's body parts would start to fall off. To make things worse, a lot of this information comes from the parents. When Danny comes over to the Owens home to give Wesley his Lincoln costume, George asks how he's doing, to which Danny replies,
Well, I got AIDS, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Sadly, with all the misinformation that he's heard, Wesley doesn't want to wear the Lincoln costume and wants Danny to stay away from him. The family has a discussion through which viewers learn that AIDS is contracted through sexual contact, infected needles, and contaminated blood. Still, Mr. Belvedere and Mr. and Mrs. Owens are concerned, knowing that Wesley and Danny shared ice cream, had a tendency to roughhouse all the time, and sometimes even get scraped up. I know, it's kind of weird, but it was 1985. Anyway, in the process, there is informative information about pediatric AIDS, and Mr. Belvedere even contacts the CDC. Wesley then has a change of heart and invites Danny to do the Lincoln part with him in the pageant. The kids and parents are nervous when Danny takes the stage. One parent even shouts for their kid to get away from Danny. Danny ends up not remembering the Gettysburg Address, but he does remember this quote from Lincoln.
If the good people, in their wisdom, shall see fit to keep me in the background, I have been too familiar with disappointments to be very much chagrined. Thank you.
Wow. Huh. The parents applaud. It was a legit teaching moment. It was really, really good. Growing Pains followed the lives of the Seavers, a middle-class family on Long Island, and the show had numerous very special episodes that dealt with racism, drunk driving, and death. R.I.P. Matthew Perry. But by far, the most memorable and possibly traumatizing for 80s kids was the season 2 episode Thank God It's Friday, which dealt with drugs. Mike and his two best friends, Eddie and Boner, are looking for something to do on a Friday night when they score an invitation to a college party. When they arrive, they can't believe that some of the notable Dewey High School alum are in attendance, including two girls that they are all attracted to. But there's something else going on at this soiree. People keep going to the bathroom in groups because it turns out there's a ton of cocaine at this party, and apparently the bathroom is the only place to do it. Mike hits on one of the girls, and his cheesy pickup lines do the trick because she wants to do coke with him. Her friend wants to party too, and the girls invite Mike, Eddie, and Boner to do some lines with them in the bathroom and then go into the hot tub. Eddie and Boner can't believe their luck. They don't see the harm in doing coke just this once. But Mike wants nothing to do with the situation because that's how drug problems can start. Mike leaves the party but gets home late and breaks his curfew. His dad is waiting, expecting to hear another one of Mike's ridiculous excuses. But he's clearly bummed out and tells his dad what happened at the party and that he's worried about what people are going to think about him. Mr. Seaver, R.I.P. Alan Thicke, praises Mike's courage and assures him that he did the right thing. Mike starts to head upstairs but turns around to give his dad a big dramatic hug. It's then revealed that Eddie and Boner stopped by and said that they didn't go to the bathroom. Mr. Seaver is confused, but Mike is thrilled. Now, just when you think the episode is over, there's another scene at the party, but this time, Kirk Cameron comes out as himself with a public service announcement. He tells the audience that drugs aren't cool and that your friends should not try to make you do things that you don't want to do. He assures the audience that he's not being paid to say those words, it's just really how he feels. And I cannot put into words how big of a teen heartthrob and what a big star Kirk Cameron was in the 80s. My room was covered with his posters. This episode was a really big deal in my house.
I'm not trying to tell you how to live your lives, but I am telling you that you don't have to do something you don't want to just to keep your friends happy. I mean, if that's the way that they feel, then maybe they're not your friends.
Small Wonder was a syndicated sitcom with one of the most 80s premises ever. A robotics engineer creates a little girl robot named Vicky and makes it a part of his family. That ridiculous premise and low-budget look and feel of the show did not stop the writers from occasionally getting serious. Topics of very special Small Wonder episodes included things like leukemia, homelessness, and drugs. But for me, the most notable episode was the season 3 premiere titled Woodward and Bernstein, but I always knew it as the Girl on the Milk Carton episode. The crazy thing is, that whole part of the story doesn't happen till the very end. Let me explain. The episode begins with Jamie and his friend Reggie wanting to enter a journalism contest. That's the A story. The B story is that there's a new girl in school named Chrissy. Jamie and Reggie want to win the contest so badly that they submit a false story that claims the school cafeteria is serving horse meat. But of course, they quickly get into trouble with the principal for submitting a story without any solid proof or fact-checking. But then, the episode takes a hard left turn into the B story at about the 17-minute mark when Chrissy comes over to the Lawson house at snack time and is surprised when Vicky points out that Chrissy's face is on a milk carton, identified as a missing child. Chrissy is confused and goes home to ask her father about it. Then Mr. Lawson ends up calling the police. And then Jamie and Reggie make this their news story, and the milk carton is their evidence to back up their claims. Chrissy isn't at school the next day because her dad took her on the run again. But in the last minute of the episode, they are caught and Chrissy is returned to her mother. The episode then ends in a freeze frame of a smashed cake on the faces of Jamie and Reggie. It only took 22 minutes in total for everything to get back to normal. and we never see Chrissy again.
Maybe the world is blind, or just a little unkind.
Punky Brewster was one of those 80s kids shows that had their very special episodes on point. There was one about drugs that got super serious, and the one about the Space Shuttle Challenger still gets 80s kids to this day. But when it comes to Punky and very special episodes, there is no other image more memorable than seeing Cherry get in that refrigerator and hearing her scream for help. The episode is titled Cherry Lifesaver from season 2, and it began with Henry's old refrigerator breaking down, so he buys a new one. Meanwhile, at school, the kids are learning CPR from Mike in class, but Alan isn't interested in learning and acts up during the lesson, which results in him being sent to the principal's office. Back at Henry's, he puts his old refrigerator outside of the apartment building for the Salvation Army to pick up, and the box from his new refrigerator is placed outside for disposal. The next day, Punky and her friends are outside playing a game of hide and seek, and Henry is preparing to remove the door from his old fridge after purchasing the new one. But the project gets delayed because it starts to snow.
Hey, can you hear me? I need help! Punky!
Punky, Alan, and Margot are done with their game of hide and seek, but they can't find Cherry, so they tell Henry and Betty what's going on so they can help them look for her. They search the grounds high and low until the shocking moment happens. Henry and Alan find Cherry trapped inside of the old refrigerator. She's not breathing, and Alan doesn't know how to give Cherry CPR and save her because Mike kicked him out of class.
I can't. I didn't pay attention. I got sent to the principal's office.
Dear God, I don't know the procedure either.
What do we do? We can't just let her
Alan,
die.
keep calm. I need your help. First, run up to my apartment and call the paramedics. You know how to do that?
911?
Right. After you do that, find Mrs. Johnson. Go!
Cherry got trapped in the refrigerator and she's not breathing.
So he calls 911 and goes to get Betty, while Punky and Margot step in and administer CPR and successfully revive Cherry. Alan is devastated that he was unable to help, and the thought of Cherry possibly dying because of him. But Henry tells Alan not to blame himself, and suggests the two of them learn CPR together, having learned its value by watching the girls save Cherry's life with it. Henry also explained that he should have taken the fridge door off in the beginning before the tragedy happened. In the end, with the paramedics on the way, Cherry was feeling hungry, and Punky thinks that she's gonna be just fine.
I bet we've been together for a million years.
Few 80s sitcoms were as good as Family Ties, and when they did very special episodes, they didn't pull any punches. One of their most memorable starred a young Tom Hanks as Uncle Ned, who Alex discovers has a serious drinking problem. There was also an episode about teen pregnancy, and one where Mallory thinks about losing her virginity. There was an episode where Alex got hooked on speed when studying, and another where he got pressured into sex when he wasn't ready. But the very special Family Ties episode that stands out for me and millions of other 80s kids was the two-part episode season 5 finale titled My Name is Alex. The two episodes were aired back-to-back as a 1-hour-long special event, and the second half was aired without commercials. This decision was key for the impact of the episode, which was a masterclass in acting from Michael J. Fox. The episode begins with the Keaton family grieving over the sudden death of Alex's childhood friend Greg. But Alex is acting a bit strange. He tries to hide his emotions while the audience learns that Greg was killed in a car accident while running an errand that Alex declined helping him out with. After Greg's funeral, Alex starts to show signs of survivor's guilt, and he tells his sister Mallory that his life was saved out of smallness, out of a lack of generosity to a friend.
No, I should have been with Greg. I should have been sitting right next to him. I want answers, okay? Because I can't go on like this. Why am I alive? Why am I alive? Why am I alive?
Stephen and Elise try to comfort Alex, but they quickly realize that he's going to need some professional help dealing with his emotions. And that takes us to the commercial-free part of the episode. In the style of the classic American stage play, Our Town, Alex talks with an unseen therapist who helps him to confront the issues he is forced to deal with after Greg's untimely death. Through play acting, Alex revisits his grade school days and situations with his family and attempts to reassess his own life. When the therapist asks Alex if he believes in God, his analytical side tells him no, but when he expounds on, quote, miraculous things and phenomena of nature, Alex tells the therapist that he does indeed believe in God, even though he doesn't understand his logic behind allowing Greg to die. By the end of this powerful episode, Alex begins to accept Greg's death and realizes that the best way he can keep Greg's memory alive is by being more like him.
You surprised me, Alex. I didn't think you really would believe a bottom-line guy like yourself.
Yeah, well, part of me is a little nervous about it. I mean, I like to know what I know. See it. Be able to prove it on a test. To know it, to learn it, and be done. And I just got a feeling they keep getting tested on this one.
Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you may not be right for some.
Different Strokes was all about a millionaire widower with a teenage daughter who adopts the 2 children of his deceased housekeeper, which was her wish on her deathbed. The series tackled an impressive number of very special episodes during its 8 seasons. The show explored everything from drinking to drugs to teen pregnancy to eating disorders, epilepsy, and sexual assault. They even dealt with kidnapping. Twice. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the season 5 2-part episode titled The Bicycle Man. Every 80s kid who watched this episode, I promise you, still remembers it now, 40 years later. And for those of you who haven't watched it, it must be seen to be believed. You know you're in for it from the very beginning because Conrad Bain appears in a rare 20-second cold open to tell the audience that they are going to be covering a sensitive and important subject in the upcoming 2-part episode. He encourages parents to watch with their kids and to discuss the episode afterwards. It all begins innocent enough with the Drummond family visiting Mr. Horton's bike shop after renting bikes. Mr. Horton, who is played against type by the lovable Gordon Jump from WKRP in Cincinnati, and later he was the Maytag repairman, he enters the shop while juggling oranges and making jokes, making it clear that everyone loves this guy. After some begging from Arnold and a crafty sales pitch from Mr. Horton, Mr. Drummond agrees to buy Arnold a bike for his birthday. An ecstatic Arnold hugs his dad and hugs Mr. Horton, and then the bicycle man tells him that if he passes around flyers at school for a bike sale, he will throw in a free handlebar radio into the deal. Arnold is on it, and so is his best friend, Dudley. One day, before Arnold makes it into the shop, the audience sees Mr. Horton and a little boy come out of the back room. Then he gives the boy some candy and tells him that it's their little secret. When Arnold shows up, Mr. Horton invites him to the back room, which is actually his apartment, for some ice cream. Arnold agrees and walks in to find the coolest setup an 80s kid could imagine. Toys, video games, comic books, a telescope, and there's also a peephole behind a picture near the door.
Maybe it would be best if you didn't even mention, that you came back here and that I gave you all this ice cream before dinner. Why don't we just make it our little secret, huh?
When Arnold and Dudley arrive at the shop the next day, Horton takes them into his back room for pizza. Within seconds, they are looking at nudie magazines, drinking alcohol, and Mr. Horton has manipulated them into participating in a Tarzan-themed photo shoot with no shirt required.
Now we're going to take some pictures, and we're going to have another little sip of wine, and we're going to take some more pictures. And strike a pose for me there. Yeah, let's see what you do. Oh, hey, that's great, guys. Guys, we're just going to have a great time together this afternoon. Huh?
Part 2 starts once again with another PSA from Bain, and then the episode continues with more grooming at the bike shop, complete with X-rated cartoons and Boston cream pie. But Arnold is now starting to get uncomfortable, and he leaves. But Dudley stays behind, and Mr. Horton thinks they're going to have even more fun with just the 2 of them. And then he proceeds to fill up the bathtub for a game of Neptune, King of the Sea. Back at the Drummond's penthouse, Arnold finally tells his father what's been going on, and this immediately puts Mr. Drummond on the phone with the police, and he and Dudley's dad head for the bike shop.
Oh, look, I'm sorry, Mr. Drummond. I'm just about to close up here. I've had a little problem.
Is this Horton?
Yes, it is.
I think you've got a big problem, Mr. Horton.
Now, where's Dudley? Arnold told us that he was here.
The very special episode ends with the police explaining to the Drummond family how pedos operate, and they discuss the difference between pedos and homosexuals. They also make it clear that whenever this happens, it is never the kid's fault. This episode gets pretty dark, while still managing to slip in some humor, mostly through the naivety of Arnold and Dudley. There is no doubt that the Bicycle Man sparked conversations all around the country back in 1983 and traumatized many Gen Xers. It's something that we still remember to this day. And that will do it for my list of 10 very special episodes that traumatized 80s kids. Let me know which of these episodes you remember and which one affected you the most. Are you still talking about any of these episodes today? I'd love to hear about it. And please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. Okay, bye.